Everyone, good morning, good afternoon, welcome to this webinar. I am Victoria from the ILO Social Protection Department, Communication Officer. Mira could not do it today, and she's not here, then I will be doing the moderation of this webinar. Today's webinar will be on the ILO Global Social Protection Week that is going to take place from the 25th to 28th November in Geneva, in the ILO headquarters. It's a centenary event. As you know, the ILO this year celebrates its centenary, and this event is part of the centenary celebrations. I would like to introduce here Valerie Schmidt. Hello, the Director of the ILO Social Protection Department, and Christina Beren, the Head of the Policy Unit of the Social Protection Department of the ILO. Well, the structure of the webinar is going to be the following. Valerie is going to make a short introduction on the week, on the event, why this event, and the high-level segment. The event, this week of 4 days, we will be split in two segments, the high-level segment on Monday and Tuesday, and then we will have a technical segment, and it's Christina who is going to present it to you. I'm here to answer any question concerning the communications aspects or side event, other activities that you may need to know. I also would like to clarify something regarding the questions and answers. You are encouraged to send questions to the panelists throughout the webinar. We will make our best to address all the questions during the question and answer session at the end of the webinar. However, if it's not possible, you can send your questions and answer in a written document, and we will make sure that you receive an answer. The report of the webinar will be available, and the recording will be available in the socialprotection.org website. And I think that is all. You can start, Valerie, please.
Yes. Thank you. So maybe we move the slide, no? Yeah. So welcome everybody to this webinar. So as my colleague Victoria Giroux explained, we are pleased now to really present to you this Global Social Protection Week that will happen from 25 to 28 November here in Geneva. What is interesting is that we have tried to ensure that as many people as possible can participate in this week by following many of the discussions through the online system. How does it, the live stream, it's called the live stream. We will also have in between the sessions some interviews of high-level people through our ILO live studio, so that you can also listen to more face-to-face discussions, interviews with our the director of the communication department of the ILO will organize this for all of us, and especially for you, so that you can all the time during the whole days have access to interesting information. So as Victoria mentioned, this event of 4 days is part of our centenary celebrations at the ILO. As you may know, we were born in 1919, and so this year we are 100 years old, which means that for the past 100 years, the ILO has been supporting countries in developing their social protection systems. So for us, this year is very, very particular, and it's very important for us to look at the past, obviously, what has been achieved in the past 100 years. Look at the situation today, what is the social protection situation around the world, and to look at the future of social protection. Obviously, there are many, many changes in the world, climate change, demographic changes, digitalization, globalization, that have a tremendous impact on the way many countries see protection. So the idea is also to really try together to shape the future of social protection during that week. So we have organized the week in two parts. The first 2 days on Monday 25 and Tuesday 26 it will be our high-level conference. So you don't have access right now to the details of this high-level conference. So I'm going to drive you a little bit through it, and then I think we will ensure that all the information that we have shared with you is available on the different websites. So it will have a first, so the purpose of the high-level conference first is to really reaffirm social protection as not only a human right, of course it's a human right, but also as an investment with high returns. Returns on poverty reduction, on the elimination or reduction of inequalities, but there are also many other social and economic returns. And for that purpose, we will be really pleased to have a video address of Amina Mohamed, who will most probably for one of the first time talk specifically about social protection. And Madame Michelle Bachelet, who is the High Commissioner for Human Rights, who will come for this event. So together with our Director General, Mr. Guy Ryder. As you may know, Michelle Bachelet has a long experience in the social protection floor, both from her previous responsibilities in Chile, but also she chaired a commission of her name called the the Bachelet Commission on the social protection floor. So she is really a strong believer in the social protection and the universal social protection. So these welcoming addresses on the importance of social protection will be followed by a high-level panel with many ministers from the different developing countries and also European countries, to show to what extent social protection is really an investment with high returns, and to illustrate different types of returns. Then in the afternoon we will move to two other high-level discussions. One on the situation of social protection, where we will again have a number of ministers explaining what is their situation in Mexico, in Kenya, in Djibouti, etc., in Dominican Republic, etc., in Peru. And to illustrate a little bit, when we say 55% of the world's population has no access to social protection, what does it mean in the different country contexts? And who are those who are hiding behind these 55% of these 4 billion people? Who are they? And how can we ensure that these people can progressively be covered with universal social protection systems, including floors? And later in the afternoon, we will also have a panel with a lot of development agencies. So the World Bank, Michal Rutkowski has kindly agreed to come to our conference. We will also have, so from the World Bank, we will have also the Deputy Director General of DEFCO, European Commission, Marietta Jager. We'll have the Director of the UN Joint Fund for Agenda 2030, Lisa Courbiel, Peter Salama, who is the Executive Director at WHO. So all these people, plus of course our Director of the Multilateral Department in the ILO, so Christophe Perrin, will explain how the UN plus the World Bank, all these and the development bilateral, multilateral agencies have really tried to coordinate their efforts for the past 10 years, not only at the policy level, but also in the countries to ensure that more and more countries move towards universal social protection and the achievement of the SDGs on social protection. The second day, we will move to, so it will still be a high-level conference, but we will move to another topic. The idea is to show that this coverage gap that is enormous and that we have identified on the first day, so these 4 billion people who are not covered, this coverage gap actually is linked to a financing gap. So there is still underinvestment in social protection in many countries, and the idea will be to release a study that the ILO is now finalizing to assess what is the global financing gap for social protection. Are we talking about billions, but how many billions per year would be needed really to close this financing gap and to ensure that especially low-income countries can really accelerate the progress towards SDGs on social protection and universal social protection. So this on Tuesday we will have two discussions. One on really assessing this financing gap, where we are really glad to welcome Mr. Jeffrey Sachs, who will from the Columbia University, who will really explain all the work that we are doing actually with him also in the context of the financing for development. We assess what is this financing gap if we want to achieve the SDGs on social protection by 2030. But we will also have many other high-level panelists who will explain their perspective. What does it mean concretely at country level and from a human rights perspective to have this financing gap. And then the following session will be how to fill this gap, how to increase the fiscal space for social protection through domestic resource mobilization, tax reforms, extension of coverage to the informal economy, etc. And also whether we could maybe rely on international financing assistance to fill this gap in some countries that don't have yet the capacity to increase domestic resources tremendously by 2030. So this is really a very, very, I think, interesting high-level discussion that I really encourage you to follow, especially because we will release for the first time the exact figures on the financing gap for social protection. And in the afternoon of the second day, we will have a commitment session where many of our partners, but also constituents, so constituents for the ILO, it means governments, workers, and employers representatives, will commit to do something very concrete, whether it's at the country level, at the regional level, at the global level, to contribute to reducing the coverage gaps and the financing gaps for social protection. So this will be really a sort of pledging session, but it's not only pledges in terms of I'm going to put X million on the table for social protection, but also it can be policy decisions made at country level that the governments will be happy to share with us. So this is a little bit this second day. During the day, we will also have other moments so that people can interact, can exchange very precise, concrete knowledge and know-how. For instance, we will have every day at 5 p.m. a marketplace with a speed networking session where different projects actually will share what they are doing concretely at country level, at the global level. For instance, on Monday, we will have Lisa Kjøbel, the director of the UN Joint Fund, explaining to what extent, what are the lessons learned from the first call for proposal of the UN Joint Fund that was on social protection, and how do we move now from this call to the next one, which is more on innovative financing. So it's really interesting to have her perspective here, because we are talking about social protection, also on how to finance social protection. And also during these 2 days, and also during the following days that Christina is going to present, we will also have a number of side events to allow our partners to share and to release, to launch specific studies that are ready now, and so that to use the opportunity of this very large forum, because we are expecting over 300 participants, to really do a little bit of publicity about their work. Another important point, on Tuesday at 5 p.m. we will have it's the first membership assembly of our global partnership for universal social protection, so USP 2030. So we will agree on especially the governance, I think, structure of the USP 2030. This partnership started, if you remember, 2 years ago at the UN General Assembly in 3 years ago, 2016, already 3 years ago. Now it's relatively well structured. There is a secretariat that is doing a phenomenal job, and we have a number already of countries that are part of this partnership. So of course, this Global Social Protection Week will be a great opportunity to gain more members of this partnership, especially from the countries. And so we will take the necessary time, I think, to explain what is the value of joining this USP 2030 and what is our ambition as well for this partnership. If you had the chance to follow the discussions at this UN General Assembly in September about the UHC 2030 that adopted actually a high-level political declaration on universal health care. This was like a very, very, very important moment, I think, And we should aim, I guess, at having a similar outcome in a few years' time on USP 2030 with hundreds of member states supporting USP by 2030. So I will stop here because then Christina can explain a little bit the following 2 days of this Global Social Protection Week. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Valerie, and hello to all. Let me just very quickly try to move to the next slide. Okay, here we are. So as Valerie had mentioned, after the first 2 days of high-level discussions, we are trying to dig a bit deeper in another 2 days on the Wednesday and the Thursday of that week, and really trying to have a more in-depth discussion on specific issues which are related again to how to achieve universal social protection, but with a specific focus also with a kind of looking at the future of work. What does it mean in countries at different levels of development, in different contexts? And in fact, this also comes after you might have heard about the Global Commission on the Future of Work, which came out with a report in January this year. And following that, also the International Labour Conference has adopted a centenary declaration for the future of work in June this year. So in a way, this conference and especially the technical sessions will also provide an opportunity to really discuss and elaborate on what's the role of social protection for this human-centered future of work that we would want. And all the sessions that I'm just kind of going to go through very, very quickly. In all the sessions, we have a very interesting panels, and I think almost all of them have representatives of governments from different regions, have representatives of workers, of employers and business, of societies, of development partners, of academics. So it's a very interesting group of people that will be assembled for these discussions, and obviously also we're hoping to have very engaging discussions with the audience for each of them. So we have organized the technical sessions in 6 streams. So the first 3 streams will happen on the Wednesday, and this is what you now see on the slide. And the second set of 3 streams will happen on the Thursday. So for the first stream, the topic that we want to go into is achieving universal social protection, covering the uncovered and reducing inequalities. Looking in more detail at the challenges and opportunities around covering the missing middle, the informal economy workers. And this session is being co-organized with the OECD and WIGO. And it will actually also be followed by the launch of one report that we have prepared together with the OECD and a guide that we have been preparing at the ILO on this specific topic. The second session will really zoom in on the question of health protection and how to achieve universal health coverage. And the third session, which is co-organized with the FAO, will zoom in on the specific situation on rural workers and rural populations. I have forgotten to mention that actually the technical sessions will be opened by a high-level opening session, a plenary. And this is about social protection for facilitating transitions and a future that works. And when we look at the transitions, it's actually transitions on 2 levels. On the one hand, it's individual transitions. I mean, as kind of labor markets and employment and work becomes more fluid, people will more and more kind of move between different phases of their life. They will be moving from school to work, from work into retirement. They will have to learn much more and throughout the whole life course. So it's very much also about lifelong learning. We're also looking at demographic changes, at migration, at climate change. But then it's also the transition at the societal level. So how to see how the economy is changing and the role of social protection in supporting those structural transformations of economies and of societies. So moving now to the second stream, adapting social protection to a changing world, which is very much looking at these kind of more macro level changes and transformations, but obviously also looking at what are the implications for people and how social protection can play a role in actually helping people to face those challenges. And the first session is on social protection on climate change. It's really how can social protection facilitate a just transition to a greener economy. The second will be devoted to the question of migration, how to extend social protection to migrant workers, how to ensure equal treatment for them, how to ensure in particular also for those who are currently in the informal economy, that they can be better protected and have better access to social protection. And the third session in this set of sessions will be on social protection in the context of humanitarian and development nexus. And again, kind of seeing how we can build stronger bridges between humanitarian interventions and really building up social protection systems. And the third stream is about exactly that, building up universal social protection systems. And the first session will be looking very closely into what does it actually mean to build up rights-based social protection systems in a very practical way. What does it mean for the financing? What does it mean for the administration? What does it mean for the way how programs are designed and implemented? And this session will be co-organized with the High Commissioner for Human Rights. In the second session, we're going to zoom in a bit more specifically on formulating national policies and strategies and national dialogue. And this particular session is co-organized with the Friedrich Ebert Foundation. And the third session in that stream will address, well, one of the quite controversial, quite often questions about the reform of pension systems and how to build adequate and sustainable pension systems. And we should also, I already mentioned the launch of the OECD ILO report and the ILO guide. There will be a second launch, which is about an online tool on the ratification of ILO social security standards, and a side event organized by UNDP with the launch of their recent report on the state of social assistance in Africa, which is also very much a kind of a joint UN initiative. And we will be live tweeting from the technical sessions. So just for me not to forget that. And then on the Thursday, and we have another set of very interesting and stimulating discussions on three different streams. One is on financing, how to finance sustainable social protection systems. And this stream will look in much detail on the question on financing gap and creating fiscal space for achieving SDG 1.3. And as Valerie mentioned, this question has already been discussed in the high-level panel, but here we want to go in more depth to really see what could be the next steps in that discussion. And we'll have representatives from the IMF, from the European Commission, from other important partners in that session. And the session 4.3 here will look in particular, it was a specific question and looking at ways how we can close financing gaps for very poor countries and exploring the feasibility of international financing for social protection system to really to complement the national efforts in financing social protection systems. And so the stream 5 is then again looking more specifically at the concept of the future of work with 3 sessions. One is looking at the question of how to best invest in people's capabilities. And for this session, we're going to zoom in specifically on the role of social protection supporting lifelong learning and labor market transitions. In the second session in that stream, we look at specifically at the situation of social protection for workers on digital platforms. What are the specific challenges and what are possible solutions in that for these types of workers? And also here we have very interesting discussions, among others, with a representative of the Chinese government, with a representative of Uruguay, the European Commission. So that will certainly be a guarantee for a very interesting discussion. And the same will be for the last session in this stream on gender responsive social protection and the care economy, which we're co-organizing with UN Women and the Department for International Development of the UK, where the question is how can we build better linkages on the one hand between care and social protection and women's empowerment, looking at how social protection systems can be more gender responsive. And this is also part of an initiative from the SPRP, the Social Protection Interagency Cooperation Board, which has a specific working group on this question, and which is chaired by Dirk. And last but not least, stream 6, making the right to social protection a reality of all. We have again 3 very stimulating and interesting sessions. The first one will look at the opportunities and risks of new technologies in the delivery of social protection. So looking at ways also, how can we better harness digital technologies in delivering social protection, but also at the same time, what are the risks and the necessary considerations that we need to do. And this session is being co-organized with the GIZ in Germany. The session 6.2 is about building a culture of social protection. So this is a lot about awareness raising, about making sure that people are aware of their rights and responsibilities when it comes to social protection. And it's really about also building trust, which I think is a very important topic in that context. And last but not least, the session 6.3 will look at tripartite action for the development of sustainable and socially responsible social protection systems. So looking at the specific role of social partners in that context. And on the Thursday, we're also going to have the launch of a handbook on fiscal space for social protection, which is linked to the stream on financing, and a side event organized by the Friedrich Ebert Foundation with a new publication on the challenge of national dialogues for social protection floors. And now I'm just wondering what I've forgotten to mention. Oh, the final session. The final session is on partnering for universal social protection in SDG 1.3. This is really also an opportunity for the different networks and groups to really report on progress. Valerie has already mentioned USB 2030, but it's also about the UN Social Protection 4 initiative, the SPRP. This is the Social Protection Interagency Cooperation Board, the Global Business Network for Social Protection Force, the Workers Network for Social Protection Force, and also the civil society, the Global Coalition for Social Protection Force. And so basically all these networks are going to come together and see kind of how can we move together into the future to really build more equitable and more sustainable and more adequate social protection systems. And
maybe the outcome document, you can talk about it? Or you want me to? Yes, okay. So during the whole conference, both the high level and the technical segments, each session will lead to a sort of statement or conclusion or recommendation that will be endorsed by the members of the session, those who are panelists and participants. So it will be really reflecting the debate of that session. So it will be a short sentence or a short paragraph, depending on the debates within the session. And the idea is that we will take note of that recommendation or conclusion and progressively write a sort of outcome document of the event, which will be a sort of declaration that will be read during the last plenary session on partnering for USP and SDG 1.3, and will be endorsed by all the participants of the Global Social Protection Week. Why we want to do this outcome document? It's because it's for us, it's, as you may have understood already, it's really a very important moment. It's a centenary. We are looking now at the future of social protection, but based also on the lessons from the past and the situations from the present. So for us, it's very important to have this kind of document that will really shape the future of our work and most probably also the work of other institutions, countries, workers and employers, and civil society that will participate in this event. Next year at the International Labour Conference, which is taking place in June, we will have a discussion on social protection with all the ILO member states, workers and employers. And of course, the outcome of this Global Social Protection Week will be shared with all our constituents and most probably also be like a food for thought for the development of ILO's work in the field of social protection in the future. So yeah, this is what I wanted just to add. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Christina. Well, I see that we had a question from the audience. It's from Claudia Robles. Thank you, Claudia. Then I would like to confirm that yes, we will have the high-level panel on Monday and Tuesday is going to be live streamed. You can find it in socialprotection.org. And then the sessions on Wednesday and Tuesday and Thursday will be live tweeting and not streaming, but you will have constant information in social media channels, particularly Twitter. Then another thing I wanted to recall you is that the registration is still open. It's maybe going to close by the middle of next week. Then if you want to register, it's still time. You can do it in the website of the event. You can see the link to the website in the last slide. Then I don't see any other question. I don't know if
maybe I can just add on the website. You already find description of all the sessions on the website, and not only in English but also in French and Spanish.
All the information is in French and Spanish in the website, and you will find the resources. You will find the most important publications and links to the publications that are going to be launched. Are not yet available, but it will be very soon. Then, well, I don't know, Valerie, Christina, you want to add something? Oh, I can see that there is another question from Gabrielle Coel. Thank you, Gabrielle. She's asking us who could be drafting that outcome sentence paragraph. Drafting, yeah.
So it will be said in public. So it's the moderator that will do a sort of wrap up at the end of the session and say the sentence. And it will be noted by the scribes, the note takers, and sent to the team that is managing the preparation of the outcome document. Our idea is that every night. We receive already an advanced draft of the first paragraphs of the outcome document that have been endorsed during the day. And then progressively, this outcome document is built with more and more paragraphs. And so on the last day, of course, we will have only a few minutes to read the last contributions. Yeah. This is the
Thank you,
idea.
Valerie. There is another question. It's coming from Sigrid Kulte. Then, I wonder when the social assistance, non-contributory part of social protection will be discussed during the conference. For example, targeted health use, see exemption.
Actually, at the ILO, when we talk about social protection systems, we are also talking about social assistance. So we have a framework that is very comprehensive. We look at social assistance that should be there to cover all those who cannot contribute to social insurance, and social insurance that is there for those who can contribute. And of course, in the middle, you have most of the people in the informal economy that are not covered by targeted social assistance and are not or have difficulties to access this contributory social insurance. So here is also a very important part of the discussion, is how to cover this missing middle with either by relaxing the targeting system on social assistance, so having more universal or basic social protection schemes such as universal pensions or access to universal health care or universal access to health care, or by developing social insurance or contributory schemes that are adapted to the characteristics of informal economy workers, as we can see in many, many countries now, especially in Latin America, but also, for instance, in Nigeria and countries in Asia. So the idea is really to give them access also to contributory social security. So social assistance will be obviously part of the discussion. And for instance, Christina was mentioning this session on pensions and pension reforms. And as you can see, it is under the stream building universal social protection systems, because we will have, for instance, the example of Mexico that will explain how they have established their universal pensions.
Yeah. Maybe just to complement, because the question was also mentioning health. So there is this specific session on health protection and how to reach universal health coverage, where this question will also be addressed. But in addition, also Valerie had mentioned also the speed networking session in the marketplace. There will also be some specific sessions on health protection in these sessions.
Thank you, Christina. Then we have another question from Sigrid. Then I wonder which links will be established with the Grand Bargain work stream related to cash social protection led by UNICEF, DFID, IFRC.
Yeah, so the Grand Bargain is led by these institutions, but the ILO is part of it, and especially as regards the discussions on cash transfers. We have also specific sessions looking at the access to social protection for refugees and host communities, etc., that can also be relevant for this discussion of the Grand Bargain. But in case you are coming, what is the name of the person? Yeah, we can also give you, introduce you to the persons at the ILO who are working as part of the Grand Bargain.
Yeah, and we have another question from Sigrid. Thank you, Sigrid, for your questions. Then will the question be discussed on how to extend social protection systems to forcibly displaced population, such as refugees?
Mm-hmm. Yes, this will be explored in the session on social protection in the context of humanitarian and development nexus, which is on Wednesday at 3:45, and also it will be discussed during a side event which will be on Monday, I think. Yes. It's an ILO and UNHCR side event on social health protection for refugees, lessons learned from ILO UNHCR partnership, because we are partnering with UNHCR on ensuring that refugees and host communities can have access to health protection. Any other
I
questions?
don't see any other questions, so thank you, Christina and Valerie. And then I would like to recall that this webinar has been recorded and will be placed in socialprotection.org. And if you still have questions and you didn't have time to write it, you can still send it to us and we will answer in writing. And then I invite all the attendees to subscribe to the socialprotection.org and answer the survey available after this webinar.
And as Vicky mentioned, we are waiting for you in Geneva. We will be really pleased to meet you in person. And for that, you just need to register on our website.
Oh, well, we have another question that maybe we can answer. I think it's still from Sigrid, and thank you again for your question, Sigrid.
Secret, we really want to see you in Geneva.
I promise, but you can ask more if you want. Then, within extending social protection to migrant workers on portability of benefits, will be the situation of the internally displaced population discussed as well?
I think so. I think so. Yeah. It's in the session 2.2, extending social protection to migrant workers. So we will look at, of course, bilateral, multilateral agreements to ensure that workers who have proper contracts can really enjoy social security in the host countries. But we will also look at the question of forcibly displaced populations. But for instance, we have someone from IOM coming to the conference. So Jacqueline, she's the director of the health unit in IOM, and she will be there for this whole stream number 2, but she will speak more specifically in session 2.3. Anyway, it will be if you are able to come, Sigrid, it will be a great opportunity for you, I think, to meet the experts, the projects, people who have experience in these areas.
Thank you, Valerie. And then we have one last comment from Gabriel Coed, and I hope to see you here. That is, looks like a fantastic program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Yes, yeah, thank you all.
Well, one last comment.
I know.